The Grand Conference Hall in Geneva seemed to breathe with tension that evening. Crystal chandeliers scattered shards of light across polished marble floors, while alpine winds rattled faintly against bulletproof glass. The air conditioning hummed, yet the room felt stifling, as if the weight of decisions yet unspoken pressed down on everyone present. Donald Trump sat at the head table, unmistakable, his presence sucking attention toward him like a magnet. Cameras flashed relentlessly, their staccato bursts as sharp as lightning across the room. His face was practiced, confident, always aware of the lenses feeding images to the world. Every gesture of his hand, every narrowing of his eyes had already been rehearsed 1,000 times in boardrooms and rallies. Across the chamber, the African delegates stood out vividly. Their colorful garments and proud bearing contrasted sharply with the monotonous black suits and silk ties of Western leaders. And there, among them, sat Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso. Young, sharp, silent. His uniform was immaculate, his posture military perfect. His eyes carried storms, yet radiated calm. Observers whispered of him as one speaks of a rising star, underestimated by some, feared by others, respected by many. When Trump spoke, his voice carved through the air like a blade. These African nations, he declared, always asking for partnerships, always demanding aid, always pushing for sovereignty. He leaned back in his chair, theatrically confident, drawing nervous chuckles from some corners of the room. Others shifted uncomfortably. Then, with a showman's flourish, he gestured toward the center of the hall. A chessboard appeared, polished and gleaming under the lights. The pieces stood tall, carved from ivory and ebony, soldiers awaiting their generals. Trump's grin widened. "Let's make this real," he boomed. "Who here thinks they can outplay me? Business, negotiation, strategy, all the same game. Outthink me here, and I'll resign my campaign. Lose, and you drop your sovereignty demands." The hall fell silent. The laughter evaporated. The air thickened into something electric. Diplomats looked to one another, eyes darting, measuring risk. To engage was dangerous. To decline was humiliation. Traoré's chair scraped against marble as he rose. The sound echoed like a shot. He stood with deliberate calm. His words came steady, accented but strong. "I accept." Cameras erupted. Flash bulbs painted the moment into history. Trump smirked, waving him forward as if summoning a child. But Traoré walked with the steady rhythm of a man carrying centuries of dignity in his steps. At the board, Trump claimed the white pieces instantly, seizing the privilege of the first move. He leaned in with his trademark grin. Traoré, however, was unshaken. He clarified the terms in a voice that cut through the silence like iron. "If I win, I don't want your resignation. I want respect, equal partnership, and an end to condescending aid that chains us." The hall stirred, murmurs swelling into gasps. Trump's smile faltered, briefly, before recovering. "Fine," he said, his bravado cracking only for a second. The moderator, sweating despite the cool air, established the rules. The clock was set. The stage was fixed. The world held its breath. Trump moved first, thrusting his king's pawn forward. A classic aggressive opening. "The winning move," he announced, theatrically pressing the clock. The American press scribbled frantically, their narratives already half-written. Trump, the master dealmaker, overwhelming an African novice. But Traoré's eyes were steady. He mirrored the move with his queen's pawn. Not submissive, not reactive, equal, balanced. His fingers pressed the clock without hesitation. As the game unfolded, Traoré's mind slipped back years, to Bondoukoui, under the shade of a great baobab tree. He was a boy then, sitting cross-legged on a woven mat, watching his grandfather Amadou move pieces across a handmade chess set carved from ebony and ivory. "Chess is liberation," Amadou had said. "It is sacrifice. It is patience. Sometimes you must lose your queen to save your people." The boy had listened, absorbing every word. The elders had chuckled at the seriousness with which the child studied the board. French expatriates in nearby cafes had underestimated him, but each match had been a lesson. His grandfather had lived through Sankara, through coups, through betrayal. He knew that games were never just games. They were metaphors, rehearsals for real battles. "The colonizers taught us chess to prove their intellect," he had said once, voice gravelly with age. "But they forget, the oppressed study their oppressors more carefully than masters study slaves." Those words returned now, stronger than the applause, sharper than the camera clicks. Trump advanced quickly, developing knights and bishops, his commentary continuous. "Speed wins," he barked. "Aggression wins." Delegates smiled nervously. African leaders held their breath. Then, to everyone's shock, Traoré sacrificed a bishop. Gasps echoed through the hall. Trump's hand shot out, seizing the piece with glee. "Amateur mistake," he crowed, but Traoré didn't flinch. His calm never wavered. 3 moves later, the board transformed. Trump's pieces were overextended, exposed. Traoré's queens surged forward, supported by rooks placed with quiet precision. The trap closed like jaws. Chess masters in the audience leaned forward. Journalists scrambled. Analysts' evaluation bars swung wildly on screens. Advantage Trump, now advantage Traoré. The African delegation exhaled, hope dawning on their faces. Trump muttered, "What the?" His confidence cracked. As the middle game unfolded, Trump's swagger dissolved into tight-lipped concentration. Traoré's style was fluid, instinctive, shaped not by tutors but by lived struggle. His pieces moved like Sankara's speeches, interconnected, purposeful, each supporting the other. Trump's forces, by contrast, stood tall but isolated, towers of ambition without community. Every sacrifice, every move was calculated. Traoré was not playing for spectacle, he was playing for history. Trump began to sweat. His fingers hovered over pieces, retreating, uncertain. For the first time, the master of bluster had no words. Around the world, screens lit up. In Ouagadougou, crowds gathered in the streets, taxis abandoned mid-road as drivers rushed to watch. In Nairobi, Lagos, Johannesburg, hashtags trended, Traoré plays, Africa rises. The board was more than a game now. It was a battlefield of dignity. Trump's attack faltered. His queen flailed. His pawns crumbled. Traoré's rooks swept across the board with inevitability. The checkmate loomed. 5 moves away, maybe 6. Trump's hand trembled. He looked up, voice breaking. "What do you want?" Traoré's answer came steady, unshaken. "Only what we agreed. Respect, equality, partnership." The silence that followed was profound. It felt as though the entire world had inhaled at once. And then finally the unthinkable. Trump extended his hand across the board. "You win." The hall exploded. Applause thundered. Delegates embraced. Cameras flashed endlessly. Journalists typed furiously. The impossible had happened. Within hours, the footage went viral. Trump's open hand of surrender. Traoré's calm nod. The eruption of cheers. In Ouagadougou, people danced in the streets as though independence had been won anew. In Addis Ababa, the African Union called emergency meetings. In Western capitals, diplomats scrambled to recalculate their strategies. The chessboard itself was later sent to the African Union Museum, displayed like a sacred relic. Children pressed their faces against the glass, imagining futures free from condescension. Universities launched scholarships in Traoré's name. Think tanks studied his strategy. Protesters carried his quotes on placards. The world could no longer pretend African excellence did not exist. Even critics, who dismissed the match as theater, could not erase its impact. For young Africans, the lesson was eternal. We are equal, we are capable. In Bondogi, beside the Baobab, a statue was raised. Traoré at a chessboard, not in triumph, but in thought. The reminder was clear. The game never ends. Dignity must be defended in every generation. And sometimes on quiet evenings, villagers swore they could hear Amadu's laughter mingling with the children's, as if ancestors themselves celebrated not an ending, but a beginning. History had shifted. On 64 squares, the world had been forced to witness equality in action. Africa had spoken, and this time, the world could not look away.